dive. We're tackling The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel today.
Oh, I'm ready. Such a fascinating read.
It really got me thinking differently about money.
It really gets under the surface, doesn't it? Like all those hidden factors that shape our decisions about money.
Exactly. He calls it our financial fingerprint, right? Totally unique to each of us.
Yeah, like that example of someone who lived through the Great Depression.
Oh, right. Imagine that experience of scarcity.
It would definitely make you think twice about risk,
Totally. Compared to, say, someone who came of age during the dot-com boom.
where risk-taking sometimes meant, well, hitting the jackpot, at least for a while.
Right. It highlights how much our background really impacts our comfort level with money.
And what we even consider success financially, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing. It's not about judging which perspective is right.
It's about recognizing those different viewpoints exist, and we all have them.
And get this. He then challenges this whole idea that success and failure are always so black and white.
Yeah, he uses Bill Gates as an example, which is really interesting.
Okay, so Bill Gates, talk about success stories. But what's Housel saying about him?
Well, he points out that a huge part of Gates's success boils down to luck.
Luck. Come on, the guy's a genius, built an empire. How much luck could there be?
Of course, Gates is brilliant and driven, no doubt. But think about it. He went to one of the very few high schools back then with access to computers.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So he was in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. How many other brilliant minds were out there, but just didn't get that same lucky break?
Makes you wonder about your own life, right? What if I hadn't taken that chance, made that decision?
Right. It's like a chain of events. And this leads to his point about the danger of just trying to copy billionaires.
Oh, you mean like just do what Warren Buffett does and you'll be rich?
Exactly. We get caught up in those extreme cases looking for that magic formula. But those are often outliers, not the norm.
So maybe putting all your eggs in the be the next Elon Musk basket isn't the best plan.
Probably not. It's more about focusing on those broader patterns
The common threads among people who are successful with money.
and those who've struggled. That's where the real learning happens, you know. Those patterns often hold the real gems.
Speaking of gems, we've got to talk about everyone's favorite topic. .com compound growth.
The one everyone tells you to do but never quite explains why it's so powerful.
For real.
Yeah.
So break it down for us. What's Housel say about it?
He uses Warren Buffett again, actually. Gets you with this mind-blowing stat. Had Buffett started investing in his 30s and retired at 60,
Instead of investing for like 70 years?
his net worth would be 99.9% lower.
Seriously, that much of a difference.
It's wild. It's not just about being a good investor. It's about giving it time to snowball.
Okay, that's a powerful visual. So no get-rich-quick schemes.
Housel is very clear on that. He tells his cautionary tale about Jesse Livermore, a legendary trader,
Oh, right. Livermore made and lost fortunes multiple times.
the king of timing the market. But even he couldn't escape the pullback.
Easy come, easy go, right? But with millions of dollars.
Exactly. And his story shows the danger of chasing massive, unsustainable gains.
Slow and steady wins the race, huh?
It's a marathon, not a sprint. And to drive this point home, he makes a pretty interesting comparison. Art dealers and index funds.
Wait, art dealers and index funds? How do those two even relate?
It's about diversification. Art dealers know they can't predict which pieces will blow up in value.
So they buy a bunch, knowing some will be duds.
But those few big wins overshadow any losses.
I see where you're going with this. It's like index funds. You're not picking individual stocks.
You're buying a basket of them, trusting that over time, the market as a whole will go up.
Makes sense. It's about spreading that risk, letting time do its thing.
Time is the secret ingredient.
Speaking of things we want more of, let's talk about happiness. Because it's more than just money can't buy happiness, right?
Way more to it. Housel argues the real value of wealth is the control over your time.
More than the fancy cars and vacations.
Don't get me wrong, those are nice. But it's about having the freedom to work on your own terms.
To take time off when you need it, pursue passions.
Without constantly stressing about money. That's where things get interesting, right?
It's about options and that peace of mind. I like that.
That sense of security allows you to design a life that truly aligns with your values.
And that's where that real happiness kicks in.
Exactly. It's about aligning your finances with what truly matters to you.
Okay, so we've covered how our past shapes our views on money and that whole time is money thing with compound growth.
But let's be real, knowing this stuff and actually living it, two different things, right?
Totally. Life throws curveballs. And those financial decisions can feel scary.
It's about navigating uncertainty.
Yeah.
And Housel says trying to be perfectly rational with money. Well, it can
Well,
backfire.
I thought being rational was the whole point.
Right. But life is messy. Emotions always come into play.
So you're saying it's okay to not be a robot about money.
Exactly. Aim for decisions that align with your goals and values, even if they're not perfectly optimized on paper.
So finding that balance between logic and intuition.
He calls it being reasonable over rational.
I like that. Okay, what else can trip us up when it comes to money?
This might sound familiar. We crave those stories, even when they're wrong.
Oh, tell me about it. We see it all the time in finance. People latch onto a story and ignore all logic.
The dot-com bubble classic example. Everyone bought into the hype, even if the business model made no sense.
Because everyone wants to get rich quick, right?
It was all about the narrative.
And we all know how that story ended.
Right. A compelling narrative doesn't always mean a sound investment.
So how do we balance that? We don't want to be terrified of every financial decision either.
Housel says we overestimate the likelihood of negative events.
We think the sky is always falling.
Exactly. And we underestimate our ability to adapt. He uses the example of those peak oil predictions.
Back in the early 2000s, everyone thought we were running out of oil.
Right. But then what happened?
We got creative. Fracking and new technologies changed the game.
It's a reminder that human ingenuity is pretty remarkable.
So a little optimism can be a good thing.
Definitely. Speaking of things that are good, House talks about room for error.
I like where this is going.
He uses a blackjack analogy. Even skilled card counters, they don't win every hand.
There's always that element of chance.
Exactly. So they bet strategically, never going all in, always leaving room for error.
They're not betting on being right every time. They're betting on surviving the losses.
And that's powerful for our finances too. Life's full of surprises, unexpected expenses, market dips.
So we need those financial cushions.
Even if it means being a bit more conservative, it helps you weather those storms.
Having that margin of safety, that peace of mind.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something that can really mess with our financial decisions. Other people,
Oh, yeah. It's easy to get caught up in what everyone else is doing with their money.
especially with social media, right?
Yeah.
But Housel cautions against blindly following the herd.
Because everyone's playing a different game.
He uses this example. How much should you pay for Google stock today?
Isn't there like a market price for that?
Sure, but his point is the answer depends on you, someone with a 30-year time horizon,
They're thinking long term.
right? But a short-term trader, totally different ballgame.
So tune out the noise. Focus on your own financial game plan.
Exactly. Don't get caught in the frenzy. Your wins are your wins.
Love it. Okay, what about stories? Housel keeps mentioning the power of narratives.
We're wired to crave them. They help us make sense of the world, especially when things feel chaotic.
In the financial world, definitely chaotic.
Right. The market takes a dive. Everyone's suddenly an expert with a story.
We want a reason, a narrative that makes us feel in control.
And sometimes those stories are helpful, but they can also mislead us.
We cling to them for security, even if they're based on flawed information.
It's like fitting a square peg in a round hole, forcing a story onto a messy reality.
So how do we avoid that trap? How do we embrace stories without letting them cloud our judgment?
Housel says to acknowledge the limits of our knowledge,
Be okay with not having all the answers.
embrace the uncertainty, resist those simple narratives, and be okay with saying, I don't know.
Having that growth mindset, but with our finances.
Exactly. Staying open to new information and adjusting our course as needed. Speaking of adjusting our course, let's talk about wealth.
Isn't that the same as being rich?
Housel says no. Being rich is about what you have now, the fancy stuff.
The cars, the houses, all the things you can see.
Right. But being wealthy is about what you don't see. That financial cushion, the freedom and security.
Because you've saved and invested wisely.
It's about having that strong financial foundation that supports the life you want.
Not just putting on a show of wealth for others.
Living like you're going to be rich, not like you already are.
I like that. And this leads to his insight on saving. Saving is about the gap between your ego and your income.
Think about it. Your ego wants instant gratification gadgets, vacations, the latest and greatest.
But true wealth,
Right.
that takes patience.
It requires you to delay that gratification, be content with what you have, and save for the future.
It's like telling your ego to take a back seat while your future self steers.
Exactly. And it ties into humility. Sometimes being content with enough is more powerful than increasing your income.
Wow. So we've talked about tuning out the noise of the crowd, but What about our own past experiences?
Our financial fingerprints are always there, right? Housel says our unique experiences with money, good or bad, they stick with us.
Even if we don't realize it, they're shaping our decisions.
Exactly. So how do we break free from those patterns, especially if they're not serving us well?
Yeah, how do we rewrite those scripts?
Awareness and intentionality. First, we become aware of those ingrained beliefs and biases. Where did they come from? How are they influencing us now?
So shining a light on those subconscious patterns,
Exactly. And then we can start making more intentional choices.
ones that align with who we are now, not who we were in the past.
It's about recognizing we're not prisoners of our past. We can create a new story.
One that's more aligned with our goals and values today. Okay, so we're back and ready for more psychology of money. We've covered so much ground already, but I'm curious, does Housel actually live by these ideas?
Oh, he does. And he's really honest about it, even sharing his own financial, let's say, learning experiences.
You mean even financial gurus make mistakes?
We're all human, right? He tells a story about a dinner party. The host was a billionaire, bragging about a big deal.
Okay, typical billionaire dinner party conversation, right?
Right. But Housel asked him, when was the last time you truly felt wealthy?
Oof, good question. What'd he say?
He struggled with it, mentioned a huge house he bought, but admitted it didn't really do it for him.
More money, more problems, right?
And then he talked about taking his company public, but that just brought more stress.
So even with all that money, he wasn't feeling truly wealthy.
Exactly. And that's Housel's point. True wealth, that feeling, often comes from those moments of freedom and control.
Not from just having a ton of stuff.
It's about your money working for you, not the other way around.
Yeah, I love that. Now, how does Housel put this into practice himself?
He talks about reaching that point in his early 20s. He saved enough to quit a job he hated, took time to figure things out.
Wow, that kind of freedom. So young. It must have been scary, but also liberating.
Right. It's about the options, the opportunities that money gives you.
Not just the number in your bank account.
And this leads to another interesting thing. He prioritizes what he calls sleeping well at night, even if it goes against conventional advice.
Okay, give me an example. What does he mean by that?
He and his wife paid off their mortgage early. Financially, maybe not the best move, but
But the peace of mind was worth it.
exactly. It was about aligning their financial decisions with their values, not just some spreadsheet.
It's about what matters to you. Okay, so we've got to talk about investing. What's Housel's approach?
He's all about index funds.
Makes sense. We talked about diversification, long-term growth. That seems to fit.
Right. And for him, it's the simplicity, the peace of mind that aligns with his whole philosophy.
He's not trying to time the market or pick hot stocks, just steady growth over time.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is your financial journey is yours.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
You have to figure out what works for you, your values, your goals, even your quirks.
Love it. It's about taking control of your financial narrative.
And remembering, you don't need to have it all figured out right now. This is just the beginning.
The real work starts when you take these ideas and make them your own.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into that fascinating connection between your mind and your money.
So well said. Until next time, everyone.